Welcome to Arkansas Minds, where we sit down with Josh, one of the visionaries behind Farmers Market Direct. In this episode, we explore...
So the idea is we wanted to help local vendors.
What was that moment where you maybe thought to yourself, hey, maybe I can do something similar like this by my own someday?
After college, I got a job at a radio station, ESPN Radio. It was my first sales gig. I see stay-at-home moms as entrepreneurs. I was selling $6,000 systems like 3 months ago, $20. Like, I could care less.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and without further ado, let's dive in. So your business that you currently have is Farmers Market Direct, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it is a local-based business built off of, kind of made to be local, right? But you can scale to global, which maybe we'll talk about here in a little bit. But can you start off by giving me kind of an overall idea of what the business is?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is we wanted to help local vendors. It started out with people that would be at a farmer's market. And as we started getting into that, as I'm getting into legal and things like that, we found out that that would be very difficult. A lot of them did not meet the codes that we needed in order for me to sell at retail. Even though there's special laws made for them to be able to sell retail, they still were not meeting those specific codes. So as we continued to roll, we had to find products, and we found people that have essentially started at farmers markets, and now they have grown their business enough to where they are in code, they are in law, and so in the beginning it was very difficult, just adding vendor at a time, and grew from 3 to 5 to 10, and now we're up to 45 vendors.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so obviously you always haven't been in this business, Farmers Market Direct. Let's go all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Of where kind of the entrepreneurial mindset started for you.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that moment where you maybe thought to yourself, hey, maybe I can do something similar like this by my own someday? What was that first moment?
Yeah, so it started, I think, when I was a kid, 14 years old. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. And my dad struggled he would work weekends. He called softball. He was an umpire. And so he had his job, and then he would use his talent just from being an athlete growing up, to make ends meet, help our family out. And I remember I got really interested in golf whenever I was 14 years old or something, and we didn't have enough money for me to play.
I didn't know you were a golfer.
Yeah, I ended up playing in college.
What?
Yeah.
Did I know this?
No, I don't think we've.
That's crazy. Okay.
All right. But my passion for golf has dwindled as I've had kids and the time. Yeah. You don't have the time.
Golf is interesting. And whenever you're married and you have kids, because if you're an entrepreneur, like that kind of is your hobby, right? Because it already kind of takes so much time away from your family.
Very much.
And golf is a thing that you don't do with your family. Right. And so whenever you're an entrepreneur and you play golf literally means X amount of time away from your family. Like you can't really have a ton of hobbies like that whenever you're a business owner.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was something I was thinking about just a few months ago. But to continue, you started at golf.
Yeah, and so at that time I really wanted to play, and so I couldn't ask my family for money, so I just I'd been mowing my own yard for a while. My dad got me on that whenever I was a little kid, and by that time I knew I could mow, I knew I could weed eat, take care of somebody's yard. So I just started taking my lawnmower, pushing it down the road, asking neighbors if I could mow their grass. Ended up getting, I think I had 5 solid yards for years, and I would pick up some more. But I was making $75 to $100 a week, and I would use that money to play golf.
How did you even, going back then, how old were you?
God, I'd say 13, 14 years old.
How did you even know what to charge?
I didn't. I knew how much money I needed.
Okay.
to be able to play, and I kind of knew just an estimate of what they would be willing to pay me to do it. Now, I knew I was a kid and they wanted to help me, but at the same time, I remember some of the people that I would mow their yard, they didn't have a man living there. And so it would be a mom and a couple girls or whatever that she was raising. And so I knew there was opportunity. And so I think it was a blessing for her as much as it was for me. But at the same time, I think she loved helping me out.
I think that's very wise of you to say, okay, I need this amount of money. So like deciding that from the beginning, this is how much money I need. And so I'm going to work to get this amount of money. Because the reason why I say that is because even as a creative, I think a lot of people struggle with this. We start these ideas or dreams, but we don't have a goal actually, like an obtainable goal, right? So we start like a cupcake business. I just want to make this amount of money. Yeah. That number has no relation to their cost of living.
Right.
Or to their yada, yada, yada. And so they just make money not really knowing where they are in their goal.
Right.
Because there isn't one. And so you knew, okay, I need $75 at 13 years old. You knew I need $75. So I'm going to go get 5 yards, 5 divided by whatever. It's going to give me $75. That's how much I'm charging per yard. That's super smart.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've been having to honestly, even over the last 2 to 3 years, train myself to do with any new business idea.
Right.
It's like, how much is this going to cost me? How much is this business going to cost me monthly? And how much money do I need to bring home for this to actually benefit me and my family?
I think as you spoke to that, like it's so important that you do your pro forma at the beginning of your business. And so it's difficult when you don't have a proof of concept, which Farmers Market Direct is a very original concept. There's not a lot of people that have done this in the past. And so for us to look at a pro forma, it was very difficult because there's no data. But in doing a business like you're doing right now, you can look at other concepts that are, you can compare it to, and then you can look at your cost of living, and then you can draw your pro forma out to see if it's going to adequately take care of you.
Yes. Well, for me too, like coming back to Arkansas, it's a little bit more unique because, especially here in Fort Smith, Arkansas, there's no market for this, and there never has been. So a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the work that I provide, I am teaching the client why they should pay me this much.
Yep.
Which is interesting. So it's almost like, here's why you should pay me this much. Okay, now pay me this much.
Right.
And it's, I'm only been here for a few months.
Yeah.
But there are a few people who have said, okay, I believe in you based off of your track record. Let's try it out. We haven't had enough time to see performance-wise what that's done for them yet. But yeah, so it is a little bit different. And I think some people, like for instance, who are listening maybe from different parts of Arkansas, may be different for them too. And if it is different, if there isn't any market data or market value, I think that you have to start somewhere. So just look at what other cities are charging and then say, okay, I'm not going to make the same amount of money as I did in Dallas.
Right.
What does that look like where it's not like insane for me to make so less money here?
Right.
Like what's that number? Okay, I feel comfortable with that number, this number here. And that's where you start. Yeah. That's kind of what I've been doing, honestly.
For sure. And that sells. I mean, what you're doing right now is you're figuring out your value, and you're figuring out the value that you can give to someone if they believe in you and they trust you, and then you offer them the product that you know that you can give them, and then they believe in you. And I think that's the most important thing. Is as entrepreneurs, we're passionate about something, we're talented about something, and it is meeting that consumer, and sharing with them, hey, I have this for you. It's valuable. Is it valuable enough for you to pay this amount? And if it is, it's mutually beneficial, and that's business.
What is the first moment where you had someone believe in you for an opportunity, an entrepreneurial opportunity?
Oh, man. So that's a tough question. Almost everything that I have done has been self-motivated. And so I've gotten many phone calls to try to pull me away to do other things, but it hasn't really fit my life. I will tell you, My business that I owned for 17 years was in grocery distribution. And in that business, as I grew that business and as other manufacturers saw that I was decent at making sure that the products went from their manufacturing facility to my warehouse, and then from that warehouse to the specific locations, the retailers that sold their products, and that I took care of their products. I was efficient in getting them to the retailers. And then once they were at the retailers, I made sure that their products were displayed properly. I made sure that they were rotated properly. Then I would get phone calls from these manufacturers just offering, say, hey, I have this number. This would be your commission to do this. Are you interested? And yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah. So 17 years business with the groceries from mowing lawns at 13 years old. Tell me about life in between those two. What was some of the things maybe that you picked up, maybe that you thought you would do? Maybe some different avenues that you ventured down that ended up the door being shut in your face.
Right.
What did that look like up into that moment?
Yeah, so that's a great topic, because I think that many people my generation were told to go to college, right? And so I went to college. I finished college. But then at the back end of that, you're expecting that red carpet to be rolled out and hey, we want you, we need you, and it's not like that.
Yeah.
And so, especially in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so after college, I got a job at a radio station, ESPN Radio. It was my first sales gig, and I thought everybody would be super interested in advertising at ESPN Radio, but they weren't. And so I was seen kind of as a plague walking through their door because I'm a radio salesman. Well, I'm fresh out of college. I don't know that radio salespeople are looked at as always trying to shuck and jive or try to get business or whatever. I'm just a guy coming in trying to get you to advertise. And so that was difficult.
Yeah.
That was a year and a half of really trying to beat the bushes and trying to find business. Not very successful. And I guess the real start of my entrepreneurial life was 2 weeks before my wife was supposed to go back to work at the end of her maternity leave.
Oh, okay.
We had talked a little bit about this.
Yeah.
It's her dream to be a mom.
Okay. And
man, I'm not trying to get into this, but there's been something happened with a gentleman, Harrison Butker. He came on and talked to a group of students that were graduating from college.
Okay.
And he essentially said, if it's your dream to be a mom, it's okay to be a mom, even if you have a college degree. I heard that. Okay. Now, a lot of women rejected that because they thought that he was trying to call all women back into being housewives or whatever. That's not what I heard.
Yes.
What I heard was what I experienced. What happened was 2 weeks before my wife was supposed to go back to work, she had this huge calling that she was supposed to stay home with my son. Now, there's conflict there, okay? She has a job where people are counting on her.
Yes.
She had a college degree. She went out and got a good job. In that job, she grew. And now she's in project management. And so she's supposed to go back and get back involved in those projects. And at that time, she essentially just said to me, Josh, I feel as if we're supposed to raise our child the way we believe. And I'm afraid if we just give our child over to daycare or whatever, he's going to be raised in ways that we might not agree with. So at that time, she's making $25,000. I'm making $25,000, and I ain't getting no raise. And so we have this dilemma. And we literally got on our knees beside the bed, and we prayed to the Lord and said, hey, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we believe that we're supposed to raise our son in your name. And she called the company and she resigned. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I ended up going and giving my 2-week notice because there's no way I was going to make $50,000 there. And I literally walked out on a limb.
And it's so interesting how we as a society judge women who want to stay at home and be a mom.
Yeah.
Whenever they feel like it's something that they're called to pursue. But yet we have all these men in the world who go venture out and start all these crazy business opportunities, and they're fully allowed to with no judgment.
Right.
How is that any different? If you feel called to do something, I get it. Maybe there's like, you want to say, well, the financial, right?
Right.
Well, not everybody in this world is doing everything for money.
Right.
People are doing, like, the idea has to come from somewhere first, right?
Right.
There's some type of calling. And whenever someone's really good at something, you know that it's not only about the money. It's this person's talented at that, or they develop some skill sets that are now qualified as talent. But yet, in the same way, and obviously I'm passionate about it as well because my wife is stay at home. But it's okay. And I've had to even tell myself that a few times. It's okay. Like, I want my son to be, I want him to have the best opportunities that he can. And right now, I just believe that means that Lauren staying home with him is the best thing for him, because it also fully enables me to be in these conversations with people.
Right.
I can't do that.
Right.
I can't live the life and live out my calling without Lauren being at home with Asher.
Right.
And two, I mean, even if you're talking financials, most people are just trading checks nowadays.
Yeah.
Like if the wife works, she's a teacher, she's making $25,000 to $50,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trading it for daycare.
Yeah.
Like, so why not just take that money and spend time with your kid at home?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there, Joe. I think that what I've learned since we started bringing children into this world is families kind of live to their budget. So even if she was working, I think that it's kind of your makeup to the amount of money that you're going to make, you're going to push to your limit. And so no matter what decision we would have made right then, I think we would kind of be in the same financial situation either way. And so I'm very, I wouldn't say proud, but I am thankful.
Yes.
I think for the decision that we made. I think the second thing that's very important to say to what you just said is I see stay-at-home moms as entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And they are project managers.
Dude.
My household was a huge project. And the undertaking that my wife went through, especially for the first 8 years of, and so, I have 3 kids, Noah, Harper, Judd. They're each 14 and a half months apart. So there's about 30 months in there. Well, having 3 babies, 3 toddlers, and then 3 pre-K, man, it was a huge job.
Yes.
And so for her to be able to manage all those things, I think college prepared her for it. I think that there are tons of things that she got out of her education that got her, and she handled our finances as well. And so, man, I'm super thankful for the education my wife has, and I'm super thankful that she used that towards planting a seed in the first 8 years of my kid's life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really awesome. Okay, so going back, you started the entrepreneur lifestyle at that moment.
Right.
You had a choice to make.
Right.
Your wife said, like, hey, this is what I feel called to. You went and prayed. All right, I feel it as well.
Yep.
Now you're at a place to where you're $25,000 in the hole.
Correct.
What is that like?
So I told you I walked out on a limb, and it was literally a limb. It was me walking with Jesus and like, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? How are we doing it? And I ended up having a client from ESPN Radio that I went and ate lunch with. And I just told him my situation, told him what was going on. And he said, why don't you come work for me? And so I asked him what that was like. Ended up being, you got to understand, I'm super naive at this age too, because I don't know anything about the world, what's going on, business, all these things.
And how old are you at this point?
I think I was 26, 27, something
Okay.
like that. And so he does water purification. And so I'm thinking of water purification as, going out to people's land and testing their water for wells and things like that. Well, as I start talking to him, it's actually, he doesn't like putting it in these words, but it's a water softener. Is what it is.
Okay.
It's which is very important in some areas of the country, like say Utah. Their hardness is huge, and so it does huge problems to the pipes and all these things. Well, I'm asking him how much his salesmen make, and he's like, "Oh, over 100,000." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'll come work for you then." And so I go in there, and he shows me this sales presentation, and it's really cool. But essentially, you're going into someone's home, and you are doing a presentation. You bring this little water purifier, and you hook it up to their sink, and you show them the difference between hard water and soft water. And the presentation's 45 minutes. That you have to learn word for word, which was extremely difficult for me. But college helped me.
Yeah.
Because I memorized things all the time. And I got it to where I learned it. And he started me, which he never did this, but he started me on like a 300 a week draw. And so the idea was, as I started making sales, I would pay that back. Well, I remember I went through, I think it was 5 weeks, and I hadn't sold anything after 5 weeks. And I'll also tell you, I don't know if you've ever done a door knocking job or gone into somebody's home. Again, it was like and it's funny the way the Lord works with things, because a lot of things I experienced at ESPN radio where people weren't that excited to see me. Well, guess what? Whatever you're doing, water tests for people inside their home, they're not that excited. They want the free gift is what they want. But I'll never forget, I went through, it was like 4 or 5 weeks. I was making $300 a week, and I was just crying out to Jesus. I was like, dude, I don't know what you're doing, but this ain't working.
One kid at this time?
One kid. Man. But remember, not only $25,000 in the hole, now I'm $50,000 in the hole, because I don't have that 25 coming in from that other business anymore.
Oh.
I went out on my own.
Oh, man.
And so I'm $300 a week, and we're starting to run up credit cards, and I'm scared. And I told the Lord, I said, hey, this is it. I'm going through this weekend and I'm quitting. I told my boss, I said, this ain't working. And it was so funny, because as soon as you do that, then there's no pressure. So I went into my next house. It was hilarious. I go in there and I just start clowning. And so I hooked this water filter up, and I'm like, this is the best water in the world. And I'm just like really just laying it on.
Yeah.
I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of it, and I remember that Tennessee and Arkansas were playing in the SEC basketball tournament. And so I get to the end of the presentation, and I was like, so that's it, whatever y'all want to do. And I said, y'all just think about it for a minute. Y'all care if I go in here and watch the game? They had the game on in the other room. And so I go in there, and I hear, hey, Josh, we have some questions. And I was like, what? And so I go in there, and I start talking to them, and they're like, okay. And I said, I'll give y'all some time to talk or whatever. So I go back in there and start watching the game. And they call me back in there, and they're like, we won it. And so I was shocked.
That's funny. And that was your first sale?
That was my very first sale.
5 weeks later?
Yeah, 4 or 5 weeks later, something like that. And that weekend, I sold 3 units and made $2,000. And at the end of that year, I made $50,000.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Crazy. Now, I'm not saying that year was easy.
Yeah, yeah.
It was extremely difficult. But the cool part about it was the first time in my life I think I'd actually really leaned on the Lord and walked with him. And so it was, sell or no sell. There were a lot of conversations between me and him. I don't know if you've ever, well, yeah, you work on 100% commission. You know what it's like. Mm-hmm. Man, you $2,000, $3,000 weeks, and then you might go 3 or 4 weeks without making a dime.
Yeah.
And so learning to budget, learning how to make money, but it's not money.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Working on a yearly budget is way different than, corporate people to where they know exactly what they're making.
They have these predictions. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, again, it's, you look back at life and you see the way that God works and how each thing is a building block towards your next thing. And you don't know it's happening, but it's happening to get you prepared for the next thing he has for you.
There are a lot of moments that I've had, in the workplace, but just life in general, to where I remember I was working at a coffee shop and I had a boss at that time who internally I really was having a hard time with following as a leader. Yeah. And I just remember working day in, day out. I'm getting up. I didn't have a car at this time. So I'm getting up at 4:30 a.m., taking a bus to work every day, and getting there at 6. And I just remember, why am I doing this? I don't even feel like this person that I'm following knows really where they're going.
Right.
And where they're going is just to increase more profits. There's no actual tangible benefits of what we create here.
Right.
And I just remember God was like, you need to stay. You need to be quiet. You need to sit down, open up your eyes, look and listen. And from there, over the next year, I stayed there 2 more years after that moment. And I learned so much through the person who was my boss. Just so much through it. What's funny is I actually am drinking out of the cup from that coffee shop now. I haven't worked there since before COVID.
Wow.
But I learned so much from him.
Yeah.
And there were so many things that I was able to see from a non-critical standpoint, because before I was only focused on critical, but I just got so bitter. So much, every day I got bitter just thinking about what I didn't like about being there. So I was like, okay, what can I learn?
Yeah.
And so, they would come and they would say something to me that I didn't agree with. Well, how do I process this thing that I don't agree with and still be able to work and serve people? And that taught me so much. Honestly, it taught me more than college did.
Right.
Those 2 years taught me more than college did. How to work through tough things, how to navigate work life, how to navigate, I had gotten married during that time, those different things. So, okay, you start working at this water softening place. How do you get to where you do the grocery business for 17 years?
So transitioning, I told you it was rough, okay? And the roughness really ramped up about a year into it. After I made the money that I needed to make, he offered me a manager job. And management is totally different. You don't go into homes anymore. You're just managing your salespeople. He gave me very good pay and met my needs, but it was a flop. My salespeople were not able to hit the numbers that I was able to hit, and the crew that we had whenever I was a salesman were able to hit. And so his business in general plummeted, and he ended up replacing me. As a young man, that was devastating to me because there's guilt there, there's shame, there is, at that age, you don't see it as Jesus moving you from one thing to the next, okay? You see it as you were not valuable anymore and you let somebody down. But at the same time, pride ramped up and I said, well, I'll just go do this on my own. Because of that pride, I did go and I did it on my own. And that was the first time that I'd ever taken entrepreneurial ownership. I got my EIN and I was doing contract labor for the fellow that I work for, that's how he was paying me through sales. So I had already learned how to manage a business as far as just me being a sole proprietor. But as the next step was me taking ownership of my own water purification business. Within a year and a half, I went bankrupt. And it was a lot due to my own pride that I chased that. A lot of people from the manufacturing facility saying that I was made for this, and them saying, "Oh, we'll send you help. We'll send you people to help you kickstart your business." Weird timing. During that time, they went through a CEO change, and so a lot of promises that I was made when that CEO change was made were not kept. So the kickstart that I was supposed to receive was not given to me. So I tried to do it all on my own. And within a year and a half, I was just completely in over my head. I couldn't handle it. And went and talked to a lawyer, and he was like, "Dude, you're crazy if you don't go bankrupt." Had family members telling me not to. I'd always regret it. Honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made.
How was it mentally for you during that time going bankrupt?
So it was again, I'm a very spiritual man. And so it was conversations with God. Like, what are you doing? What's the point in this? How are you going to let me fail? I'm following you with everything I have. Like, why is this happening? And again, lessons learned. Like, he taught me a lot through that. And he pushed me into this place to where after bankruptcy happened, it was an understanding that my finances, my money, the way that I ran business, the way that I ran my household, I needed to pay attention to. I needed to not be loose with it. It is important for you to be responsible in the way you spend, in the way you pursue. And so at that time, I was going out of business, and I had a little bit of money left that I knew I could spend, and I went back to mowing. I knew that I could do yards because I'd done them for so long. I bought a trailer, a zero-turn mower, a weed eater, and a blower. And I knew that it was seasonal. So I had a buddy that I played golf with that, man, he'd show up to play golf at like 10 o'clock in the morning. We were like, what, you're good? We'd have the day off because we were going to college or whatever. Well, he was working. He was a bread guy. And so bread guys go to work at like 2 o'clock in the morning. They're off 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about, how am I going to be able to run a lawn mowing business in the off season? And so I just call him up. I'm like, "Hey, you're a bread guy. You like it?" And, "Oh man, I love it. It's the best." And he's just kind of telling me all about it. I said, "You know of any openings?" And he's like, "Man, funny you should ask. There was a tortilla fellow putting his tortillas on the shelf next to me this morning. Asked me if I knew anyone."
That's interesting.
And so I said, "Yeah, give him a call." He gave me a call, and went and interviewed with him. And so at that time, that was my first side hustle. And so I was going to do tortillas, during the morning. And then in season, whenever lawn mowing season kicked off, I was going to mow in the evening, which I did. 16, 17-hour days for about 4 or 5 months. Another thing about going bankrupt is you become driven because you're like, you're running from it. You're like, that can never happen again. So my work ethic went through the roof. It was constantly, I got to work. Not the healthiest thing in the world, but it put me in a position to where it swayed me from, I think in life, a lot of times when you're starting out, you want to do just enough work to pay the bills. Pushed me all the way in the other side of the pendulum where it was constant. I had to work. Well, funny thing is that side hustle took off.
That's awesome.
And that was the grocery business. I'll never forget my manager, my regional manager. One of my first days, we did Snyder's pretzels and tortillas, and we had just gotten chocolate covered pretzels because that was the season we were in, and he was trying to sell displays. And he said, "Go ask that grocery manager if you can get a display." Well, like I'm doing the math in my head, and I'm like, okay, if I get this display, I get like an extra $20. And so like it was nothing. Like I just went up to the manager and I was like, "Hey, you want this display over here?" Obviously, no pressure. It's $20. I could care less. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, we'll take it." I go back over to my manager, and he's like wanting to give me high fives. I was like, dude, I was selling $6,000 systems like 3 months ago, $20. Like I could care less. But I think, again, the preparation in me owning that business that went out of business prepared me for being able to go and sell a smaller retail price point because it wasn't any big deal to me.
Yeah.
And so I was able to grow that business exponentially because of my preparation that I had done in my previous work.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you now have your foot in the door in retail.
Right.
Where do you begin to see the need for Farmers Market Direct, and what was the need?
So that's another weird thing. 17 years of work, gone through my kids growing up. I've gone through, just being a part of a church family. And it's those 17 years of being a dad, being the person that runs a household, or however you want to put it. I don't want to say runs a household. That's a very bad, very poor choice of words. I guess a better way, I was the provider, okay? And there's a lot of pressure on you during that time. I love that my wife was at home, but the amount of weight that you shoulder during that time, feeling like you are the provider, even though I know he's the provider, you feel so much weight. And so throughout that time, I'd picked up habits, and I had frustration, anger, bitterness, a lot of things that I did not like about myself. And there's this ministry called Celebrate Recovery. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yes.
Okay, so our church adopted Celebrate Recovery, and they were looking for leaders, and they asked me to be a leader, and so I agreed. And
for those who don't know what Celebrate Recovery is, it's basically like getting out of any sort of addictions.
Right.
It could be it could also obviously be substance abuse. It could be, but it's also mental. Like, if you're going through some mental addictions or whatever it could be, but it's getting rid of all addictions.
Yeah, and I think it's habits, hangups, and hurts, habits, hangups.
Yeah.
And so when they asked me to do that, I was like, yeah, in college I led, a little bit of a rough lifestyle or whatever. I've been through some substance and stuff like that. And but they ask you to do what's called a 12-step study during that time. And at this point, my business is at its peak. Okay. Something that happened that was very weird is I had made the most amount of money that I had ever made in my life. And it was a very significant amount of money, and I had grown my business to this point. I'm looking at that number, okay, on my computer screen, and it was one of the emptiest I've ever felt because I was literally kind of looking up at the Lord at like, is this what you want me to do? Like I'm putting tortillas on a shelf. I, have some drivers doing this for me. It seems kind of like my life. Like I would expect you to have more for me. And it was just a very empty feeling. And I didn't know why I was having it. I should have been the most excited I'd ever been. Like I was thriving. But anyway, so this Celebrate Recovery thing started. They asked you to go through this 12-step program. I'm going through the 12-step program. And I think it's, you go and meet with like 8 other guys, and you essentially work through some workbooks. Okay. I think it was like our 3rd or 4th meeting, 5th meeting, something like that. I'm reading through the workbook, and there's a question. It says, what is keeping you from completely surrendering to Jesus? And all of a sudden, it just starts flooding in. All these things, like that there's no way I could surrender that. And because if I do, there's the fear of what would happen on the other side. And so I had a choice at that moment. I could either write these things down, be honest, or I could be vague and go down the list to like 25 or something, or I could quit, just not show up. And I decided to write them down. And that was essentially the start of what I would call a surrender, a full surrender to the Lord. And as I did that, I went in and I said the things that I had written down in my notebook. And the number one thing was my business. And there was an enslavement there to the money, to my employees, to the retailers, to so many things that I felt kept me from, they had pushed me to my capacity, I guess would be the best. So it didn't leave any room for the Lord. It didn't leave any room for me to do some of the things that I really felt like he might. And here's the weird deal. I was a part of a lot of ministries, but those ministries made me bitter because that was my spare time that I was supposed to have for myself to go play golf.
What about with your family? I'm sure it took away from that as well.
It did. It did. And that's the thing that I'm talking about, man. My 17 years of being a dad, and I think most dads would say this, I wish I would have done it different. I wish I could have done it different. But because of the pressures of life and my business and everything that was going on, I was a failure. You know, I'm proud. Proud. That's a weird. I'm thankful. Okay, for my children and how they're the treasures of my life. My wife is the treasure of my life. But the man that I am today is so much more chill, so much more trusting that the situations that are happening with my children, with my wife, with my business are okay.
Yeah, I think having those businesses and going through all these different things, it makes you, it's a hard way to learn, but it makes you wiser. Right? Yeah. You have to. Like, one of the things you said is whenever I started this new business, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I can't go bankrupt again. Like that's wisdom, that's learning, that's applying, something bad to do good now.
Right.
And I think that all those really, this is something I believe. I don't really know, at least in my career field, what I do, that there can be a separation of work and home life. It's more of an integration for me.
Oh, definitely.
It's more of how can I bring my family along into what I'm doing, and how can my wife bring me along into what they're doing. So, that could be as simple as, on Tuesdays, Lauren goes to the library. Hey, I'm going to go to the library with them every now and then. Or, hey, I'm going to go up and I'm going to work on building my studio. Y'all want to come up? They come up and they just sit down. But it's more of an integration more than a separation, because I think for me, trying to do a separation just ended in more time away.
Right.
Or it ended in toil. I'm hanging out with my family and my friends, and I'm only thinking about all the stuff I wish I could be doing for work right now because I'm so behind.
Yeah. And
integration has just been a lot more practical for me. But not having that and only working, what are you working for?
Right.
If you're not spending time with your family, and especially if you're not like making millions or at least a significant amount of money to make sure that when your kids get out of the home, they're taken care of, what are you doing it for?
Yeah. I think there's something that you said in the beginning of that that is very important that I've learned, and it's kind of given me the kind of a meaning of life kind of feeling. A lot of times, when I grew up reading the Bible, I would read it at face value, and as I've grown, I have gained in wisdom from mentors, and obviously listening to tons of sermons, tons of podcasts, tons of just listening to the Bible via audio. But one of the coolest things that I have come to is just the meaning of the word rabbi as the disciples referred to Jesus, and the word disciple as Jesus referred to his followers. Rabbi simply means teacher. Disciple simply means learner. And as I have shifted to this lifestyle of what is life, what's the point in all this, I truly think it is just a learning experience. I'm somewhat envious of you because you're starting this learning process just through these podcasts at such a young age. And so you are going to be more prepared in your fatherhood and being a husband and those things just from hearing testimonies of other men that have gone through some of the same things that you're interested in going through and some of the responsibilities that you've already taken on. And so a lot of the things that I have learned through bad experiences, good experiences, I don't know what it means for eternal life, but I do think it is going to have an impact.
What's crazy is a lot of people say, I don't believe in hell because hell is on earth. Like my life is hell. And I really do think, processing through what you were saying, rabbi and disciple, teacher and learner, life is really one of the best teachers that each of us have available to ourselves. Our own life is one of the best teachers that we have.
Yeah.
If we allow it to.
That's right.
If we allow it to. And what that means is, just taking some of the circumstances that life throws us, and instead of being frustrated, bitter, letting it imprint our hearts with darkness, we take a step back and we analyze, literally analyze. That doesn't mean you have to immediately start a path of forgiveness or whatever it may be, or getting over it. I'm not saying get over it, but you step back and you say, whoa, that was a lot.
Yeah.
And you analyze those things and you think, okay, what happened? Let's just talk about what happened. Most people have things in their life, whether it's something that they felt called to, a business, or staying at home and being a mom and your kid turned out terrible to you. And it goes not in the right direction. And then you never analyze what actually happened.
Yeah.
You never step back and say, well, what went wrong and where did it go wrong?
Yeah.
And if you never do that, you never learn.
So what you're talking about, I was sitting in and this is very funny to even bring up, but just show up, okay? Whenever you have opportunity to learn, just show up. That's how me and you met through the coffee.
Morning Mugs.
Yeah, Morning Mugs, exactly.
Hosted by Fort Smith Coffee.
That's right. But I went to a speaker that is he had books that he had read, psychologist, okay? And what you're describing is I learned about that day whenever I went to see the speaker. He said there's two ways that your body will take in information and then output, all right? You either react or you respond. A reaction comes, you feel the emotion, and then bam, okay? It's the way you want your output to be. A response is actually taking the input, taking a second or two, thinking through it, and then responding correctly. What I've found in this life is 99% reaction. Those 17 years I just told you about. Reaction. Yes. Reaction. My emotions were so out of control that I would react. And I'm definitely not proud of a lot of my reactions. But as you get older and you get wiser, taking that time, that split second, to actually think through what's going on, gather your thoughts, and then respond in a way that is healthy, loving, graceful, merciful, whatever it is, productive is, man, it's a lesson that, golly, taking your emotions out of the situation and using your mind.
Yes.
It's so rewarding.
So something that I learned in that time where I was telling you I worked for, in that moment, in that specific season, I was working for a boss that I didn't want to be working for, is he taught me something called 100% ownership. It's when a problem is presented or, it can even be something critical, like someone brings a critical thing to you about yourself. He taught me to take 100% ownership. And at the time, that was very frustrating because in that specific situation, I knew I was right. Mm-hmm. But he was like, no, just take 100% ownership that you're wrong. And man, I'm telling you, that taught me so much because let's say, for instance, you are in a situation with an employee and they're wrong. They're wrong. If they take 100% ownership and they find something out of that situation where they were wrong and they can grow, even if it was 1% of it,
right?
That only makes them better.
That's true.
They only get better.
Yeah.
And you're not a walkover. If it happens too many times or whatever, yes, repercussions like, hey, look, I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
You stand up for yourself, but taking 100% ownership allows you to grow.
Yeah.
Dude, that taught me so much because think about it. If you go from reaction to, okay, I'm going to analyze now. And not only am I going to analyze, but I'm going to go back to this person taking 100% ownership that I'm wrong. You're going back asking for forgiveness,
right,
not to point fingers. And how much of a different world would we live in if everyone done that?
Yeah, and there's no selfishness there. It's all self-sacrificing. It's all, and I mean, you're so right. You don't do it all the time because there are people that do take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right. And you find that time when they are taking advantage of it, and you cut it off.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to say I'm perfect at that. Like I struggle the most.
We all do.
With it specifically, like I struggle mostly with that. I would say in my marriage, that's been a huge learning tool for me.
Me too.
In navigating conversations and how to respond accordingly.
Yeah.
And really taking those moments to analyze, but not taking too long to analyze because then it becomes negligent. How you say it? Negligent.
Negligent.
Negligent. Yes, because then you're ignoring how this person felt because it's a day or two that just went by and you haven't responded to what they've said.
Well, I think also those are when your emotions are the most out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the people that you love. Yes. Your emotions are so heightened because you want the best for them so much.
Yes.
And so whenever you want the best and you think that mentally you have a good way of fixing whatever the situation is, and it's not being heard, then you feel kind of trapped. And that's the times where I find myself reacting more than responding. I'll be push, and I'll be like, why can't you just listen to me?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude. So good. I think there are so many things that even I'm ready to listen back to this and just kind of take some of these moments.
Yeah.
Some of these kind of like phrases that we talked about and really say, okay, how can I apply this today to my day?
Yeah.
Work life, home life,
all
the different things. But before we kind of close it off, can you kind of pitch Farmers Market Direct, tell people again exactly what it is,
sure,
and how they can be a part of it?
Yeah, to finish this up, we never really got here, but spiritually, I felt as if I was led to ministry. And so immediately I'm thinking missionary, I'm thinking preaching and all these things. I go out and kind of try those things, fall flat on my face. It's not working. Lord calls me back to business. There was something that you said in the very beginning of this that has been our motto from the beginning. We want people to use their talents, okay? So often in our Western civilization culture, we try to make a square peg fit into a round hole because that's what makes money, all right? That's not how we were created. The way we were created was beautiful, all right? You have your talents. I have my talents. God wants us using those talents. If you're a farmer, farm. If you're a rancher, ranch. If you make coffee, make coffee. So our idea is to build a platform for consumers to be able to get these products from these people that are using their God-given talent to take care of their family. Mm-hmm. All right? It's such a beautiful concept. Mm-hmm. The issue with this is it does cost a little bit more, okay? There is going to take buy-in. We have conformed to going and buying a manufactured product for a very cheap price and not really caring what's going into our body because it's cheap, okay?
And what you're describing is buying fresh versus like buying like produce from like a farmer's market, which came from a ground.
Correct.
Versus going somewhere else and just buying straight up junk.
Correct.
Like steroid induced fruit, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. And so the point to all of this is, no matter how much we want to say it, we all do have a little bit of extra money. It's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all kind of are built to where we do, and we have a choice what we put that money towards, okay? If you believe in continuing to build our local economy, if you believe in continuing to support our local entrepreneurs, whether they be farmers, ranchers, making coffee, making granola, having a nut farm, whatever it is, then we have a platform where you can do that. Okay. And we really hope, we think we have something special, and we really hope that there is consumer buy-in to it and that it grows into a place. Here's the deal, business.
Yeah.
As more and more consumers buy in, we don't want to get rich off this thing. Our idea right now, a super cool thing that we do, being in the grocery business, did you know most farmers make somewhere between 10 to 15% of your dollar whenever you go into Walmart or your local box store and you spend the money, they get 10 to 15%. All of our vendors make 62.5%.
Wow.
We make 37.5%. Our goal is to where we get to where we're at like 20%.
Wow.
Now it's going to take demand to reach those numbers. But like I said, we're not in this to make money. Now, we would like to be able to be sustainable, business and personal, okay? But at the same time, we want everyone to win.
That's awesome.
So that's the goal.
Where can they go to, what's the website?
FarmersMarketDirect.com.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much for coming on with me today and having
sir.
a conversation. Really, the goal in this podcast is to have conversations with people just like you who are in Arkansas, who are doing things that make you think.
Yeah.
And when you tell me about your concept at Morning Mugs, I began to think. I was like, I want to have a conversation with him. And we have had some conversations, but now we had the chance to have this conversation online. So,
dude, I love it. I love what you're doing, and it's an honor. And man, I hope that this brings fruit.
Thank you.